Hello, everyone. We are Team 8, and this is our presentation, Coming to America, Breaking International Artists in the U.S. We chose this topic because of our interest in the rising popularity of international music in the United States, the world's largest music market. The definition of international that we are using is music created by artists outside of the mainland United States. These genres include Afrobeats, Latin music, and K-pop. The three artists that we are choosing to focus on from these genres are Wizkid, Bad Bunny, and BTS respectively. Now I'll pass it on to Charlie to speak on common strategies used by these artists to help their popularity.
Yeah, so what we did for our project was look into those three artists and see what strategies did they all use to really break into the US. And what we came to conclusion was playlisting, social media, and collaboration all being important. So to start off with our playlisting, we first looked into a couple case studies, and what we have here is BTS's Spotify editorial playlist reach in blue, and overlaid on top of that is their monthly Spotify listeners from Chartmetric. And so what we can see is a pretty strong correlation between the two, really suggesting the power of these editorial playlists to drive additional growth and reach new audiences. From there, we also looked into what type of playlists the group was being placed in at different points in their career. And so early on, it very much was in specific genre playlists or specific moods. And those playlists were smaller relatively, but they still were able to drive additional listeners. But if we move to later on in their career, when they released their hit single Dynamite in August of 2020, they were able to be placed on Spotify's two biggest playlists. And that really drove tremendous growth, as you can see in the red on the left. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Bola to talk about our social media.
Yeah, so social media played a really big part, and we use BTS as a case study to show the impact that social media can play in a strategy to bring an artist into the US to break through. This is a timeline here that shows the Twitter follower count that BTS had from 2017 up until now of February 2022. And what we mainly got from this is that we looked at some of the major events that happened during their time on social media. And we noticed that what BTS typically would do was to release either a single or an album, and shortly after that release, they would make a major TV appearance, such as the American Music Awards in 2017, their SNL appearance in 2019, and their penultimate breakthrough in September of 2020 when they released Dynamite, and shortly after that, they went to the Billboard Music Awards, and you can kind of see the progression in their Twitter follower account with all of those different events and music releases throughout that time. And we can pan it over to talk about collaborations now.
So for collaborations, we're going to take a look at both Bad Bunny and Wizkid, looking at the Spotify listeners and the yearly collaborations as measured through iTunes. So Bad Bunny is distinct because he put a focus on collaborations early, which makes sense since Latin music today is very collaboration heavy. And although his yearly collabs have been down since 2018, overall, he still consistently gets the highest number of collaborations per year compared to our other artists. So for Bad Bunny, we believe consistency in terms of collaborations breeds consistent streaming over time. And then for Wizkid, his collaborations are more concentrated around project releases. So you see a spike in 2020 when Made in Lagos was released. Aside from that, there's more details we can get into, but there is a clear commitment to collaborations, which may have contributed to his streaming growth over the years. And although he's a global star, we think he still has room to grow in the US through more collaborations. And now Veronika is going to close this out.
So in terms of further research, some questions that we can ask in terms of playlisting is what impact of editorial versus algorithmic, can have effect on emerging artists. And then in social media, what are some effective strategies in order to actually build a fandom, and how should artists best leverage each social platform? So cross-platform research in that area. And in terms of collaboration, how should artists actually pick who they collaborate with in terms of location, genre, and in terms of location, the origin of the collaborator.
All right. I'm gonna have to stop you there. Oh, perfect timing, great. All right, so we now have 3 minutes to take questions from the judges.
I have a comment more than a question. I thought that was a really strong presentation. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a very clever use of data and how you use many different sources to overlap. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I have one question. How do you think you can expand onto other type of artists? How this is a specific type of you picked up specific artists, really big artists. How do you think you can expand your conclusion onto other types of artists, perhaps?
That's a great
Smaller
question. And we talked about that. So when looking at these artists, of course, they're superstars, so it's going to be hard to replicate that. For us, it's important to consider where your artist is coming from, which American audiences you want to focus on specifically. Obviously, in a 5-minute presentation, we don't have time to go into all of that, but also just sort of looking at strategies that can be replicated for a smaller artist, maybe looking at collaborations with other medium-sized artists, other smaller artists, so slowly building that growth over time, rather than saying, okay, I'm going to collab with Justin Bieber and then have a hit.
Thank you.
We have some time left. Any more questions from the judges?
Yeah, what's like one takeaway that you could implement tomorrow for an artist that you wanted to bring to America and break in the market?
I could take that one. I think if we had, say, okay, so you have a smaller artist who maybe has had some touring success, but hasn't quite hit the US, I would say find a similar level artist and collaborate specifically with an American artist. So like what of the collaborations we were looking at, some of them were Canadian, some were American. But finding someone who has an audience base already in the US is really key, because if you're wanting to grow here, that's where you need to start combining your audiences.